Well, Elon, interestingly enough, Iran actually blamed President Trump yesterday for the diplomatic cutoff with Qatar. Let's talk about that U.S. airbase that you mentioned in Qatar, because it's certainly the biggest one for the U.S. in the Middle East. Apparently, there have been no issues with it so far, but how bad can this go if Qatar closes the U.S. out? Does the U.S. need to find another airbase?
Look, at the moment, the US isn't showing too much alarm at the moment. Like many other countries, it's expressing regret that the countries are divided and calling on them to come together and use dialogue in order to overcome the crisis. But as for how this affects the US, it really depends on how far Saudi Arabia is willing to push this and how far Qatar is willing to take it. Crises by their nature are unpredictable. We don't know, for example, what the effect is going to be for us here in Israel. If Qatar begins to take action against Hamas feels it's being pushed into a corner, could that lead to another round of war? What does this mean for the local commodities market? What does it mean for the World Stock Exchange? What does it mean for trade in liquefied gas, which is a major Qatari export? The US is certainly hoping that Saudi Arabia isn't going to force it to take sides and demand that it relocate its airbase. Relocating something like 10,000 personnel to neighboring Saudi Arabia or to the United Arab Emirates is a very big logistical operation. It would certainly seem that it would be very difficult for Qatar to withstand pressure from Saudi Arabia and to resist it because of how dependent it is on its Gulf partners. And that would lead us to think that perhaps the crisis can be solved with Qatari concessions. But look, it's not easy for Qatar to stop playing this double game of being with Saudi Arabia on the one hand and Iran on the other. It shares an enormous natural gas field with Iran. That's why it has to remain on very friendly terms with Iran. Saudi Arabia is telling Qatar, choose a direction. Are you with us or against us? Qatar has long pushed for an independent foreign policy, and we need to see now how insistent Saudi Arabia is to make Qatar a satellite of its foreign policy and how insistent Qatar is on remaining independent.